We have been married 50 years. And I think the 50 years God put us together, and we're blessed because of Him to still be together 50 years later. I'm going to start out with where I was raised, how I was raised. I was raised in a little community, which is really just a house. I was born at home in 1943. My dad was born in 1898 and was Danish and spoke Danish and all of those things. Then I went to a one-room schoolhouse. In that one-room schoolhouse, I think you went to a one-room schoolhouse too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wonderful experience. We'd walk up the road to school and walk home again. And at our home, my home, we didn't have running water and we didn't have an inside bathroom. So we had to pump the water on Sunday nights for the laundry on Monday. And when we went to the bathroom, it was outside, and if you went inside, you had to carry it outside to the little toilet.
And they didn't have toilet paper then, so she had to use Sears catalogs for you know what.
And that's true.
It's true. The clock that you just heard is appropriately ringing, and it was the 50-year anniversary clock for my mom and dad. And when they moved from their home, they didn't have room for a lot of things, so they gave it to us, and now it appropriately rings in our house, and it's pretty neat. 50 years for us in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Do you want to share your upbringing until you get through high school?
Yes. I was born in Freeport, Illinois, to Marge and Jack Criddle, and it was in August of 42. And my grandpa Criddle had a dairy farm, and they bottled milk and they sold it in Freeport, Illinois. And so my dad worked for him, and I was part of the family on the dairy farm. And then later we moved to have our own farm, and I was the oldest of 4 children. My sister Mary Ann was 2 years younger. My brother Randy was 6 years younger, and my brother Dean was 15 years younger. And since I was the oldest, I was kind of like the hired hand on the farm. I did all the heavy work with my dad, and was raised as a farm boy. And I went to Courier Grade School. As Betty mentioned, she went to a one-room schoolhouse, and so was mine for the first 6 years. And then after the first 6 years, we transferred right in the yellow school bus to the city in Freeport, Illinois. And I think it's your turn, Betty.
Well, did you ever have to milk the cows, or
yes.
after you milked the cows, did you ever play baseball? How did you do that?
Well, I was always nuts about sports, especially baseball. And when I was real young, I'd help my dad milk the cows, and we had to milk them in the morning and the night. And it was pretty hard for a young guy to always get up in the morning. So after a while, I said, "Dad, why don't you milk those cows in the morning since I can't get up, and I'll milk them at night?" And I did that for several years until I started playing baseball, and then it was kind of difficult because I had to leave at night too, so some of those cows didn't get very long to give their milk. But I did that until I was, I don't know, 15, 16 years old.
What about your baseball field? I like that story.
Oh, on our farm, since I was crazy about baseball, I mowed a baseball field in one of our fields, and every chance we got, we'd play baseball in that field, and I would make my brother and sister bat the same way I did, and we had a big right field, so they had to bat left-handed like I did. So it's kind of a long story, but that's why all 3 of us are left-handed to this day, even when we golf or whatever we do. Even though we're right-handed people, we play baseball left-handed.
Okay.
Your turn, Betty.
And I went to high school in a little town, Dyke, and there were 40 in my graduating class, and my mom graduated in that same school in 1923. Anyhow, I was a cheerleader. I'm sure you'll find that hard to believe. Anyhow, it was fun, and then after I graduated, from the time I was little, I remember I always wanted to be a nurse. So I went to nursing school in Waterloo, and I loved every minute of it. It was interesting, it was fun, lots of friends, lots of stuff, and part of my training I went to Cook County in Chicago, which was interesting and fun. And then after I graduated, I was kind of young and single and wanted to explore. I hadn't been away from Iowa or the cornfields. So I moved to California with 2 other girls. And we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were homesick after about 6 months, but we gutted it out for about a year. Came back to Iowa, then moved to Kansas City, always head of coronary care, intensive care, those kinds of things, which was fun. And then what happened?
This is kind of when I come into the picture.
Yes, now it's ta-da.
After high school, I graduated from Whitewater State University in Wisconsin, and then worked for 1 year as an industrial engineer for the Honeywell Corporation. And then the Army was going to draft me, so I ended up going into the service as an Army officer. Long story to that, but so I'm in the Army, and when I was in Korea, that's where I was stationed.
That was during Vietnam.
During the Vietnam era, I came home on leave to go see the World Series. I was kind of a baseball guy, like I mentioned earlier. And before I came home, my brother-in-law, Merrill Hubble, married to my sister Mary Ann, said, "Gary, when you come back, you've got to come out to see us in Waterloo." He worked at a hospital in Waterloo. And he said, "I've got a friend that you would love to meet, and her name is Betty Sorensen, and she's really, really something." So it turned out that he was right. When I came home, I got to meet Betty Sorensen, and we had a good meeting, and started writing back and forth, and the rest is history, I guess.
And he was living in Illinois, and I was living in Kansas City. So that was kind of a hard way to date and commute. So I moved to Illinois and started working there. Then it was in July in 1970, we got engaged. We said, "Oh, we're going to get married, just plan a date." But, we weren't going to have a huge wedding, but when you have a church wedding, there's planning, there's this, there's the flowers and the dresses and everything. And Gary said, "Well, why don't we just make it 3 months from now, which would be October 10th.
Yeah. Betty said, "You go ahead, Gary, and pick the date. Doesn't matter." I said, "Well, no sense messing around. Let's get married quickly." So 3 months was what we scheduled, and I said, "What date?" But you just go ahead and pick the date. Well, I don't know how it happened, but I did pick October 10th, and when you know, it was right in the middle of the World Series. So when we got married, we went on our honeymoon, and we got to our hotel room, and
The Tantera Resort.
Tantera Resort in Missouri, and sure enough, the World Series was just coincidentally was on.
I should have known. I should have ended it then. I should have known 50 years ago that the writing was on the wall. Just like tonight, it was really hard for him to come and share on this video because the Yankees are on tonight also, because it's close to our wedding date.
So then, moving right along, I was a salesman in Rockford, Illinois, and they had a territory in eastern Iowa. And they said, "Gary, it's up to you where you work. You either be in Cedar Rapids or Dubuque or Waterloo or the Quad Cities." And I said, "Betty, you're the Iowa girl. What's the best city?" And she said, "Well, Cedar Rapids is the best city in Iowa." So we chose to locate here in Cedar Rapids. And we've been here 50 years. It's quite a nice story.
And we drove into town having to pick a place to live. And we came on 218, 6th Street, and there's Gateway Gardens. Now, no one remembers Gateway Gardens except us. And we looked at it 50 years ago and thought it was the coolest place we'd ever seen, with a swimming pool, with everything. So we moved in there.
And we lived there, I think, 1 year, and thought, we need to have our own house. So we looked around and bought a small house, southeast Cedar Rapids, 36th Street, 1301 36th Street Southeast. And we lived there about 2 years, a very nice house. Things were going great, but we always took walks in the area, and one of the nice areas that we'd walk was Forest Drive. And it was at the time full of big trees and just really a great setting. So one night we were walking by this house, and they had a for sale sign in the yard, And Betty said, "Oh, that's the greatest looking house. That's just super." So we approached the guy, and make a long story, it was like 31,000, wasn't it, Betty? I think, which was a lot of money for us, 31,000. So I offered the guy 30,000, and he said, "That sounds good. We'll sell it to you." So we bought the house for $30,000 and lived there 23 years, and we raised 3 great babies, really great babies, and
Gary will cry talking about the babies. See, he already is. So I taught at Kirkwood for 10 years right after we moved here, which was a great job, a fun job. Mm-hmm. And we had our first baby in 1973, and we had our second baby in 1975, and our third baby in 1979, mm-hmm. which was absolutely the greatest 10 years. Yeah. We have wonderful children. God has blessed us in a huge, huge way.
All on Forest Drive. It was a little
colonial,
special little house. And after living there 23 years, and the babies were gone or leaving, Caroline was still hanging around a little bit, I guess. But we saw another house about 6 blocks away, and we moved there, and we're still there another 24 years later.
Yeah.
So we lived about almost 48 years within 6 blocks in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah. Now we're making it sound like, for me, that the last 50 years have been perfect and easy and wonderful.
They have
and
been fine. For me.
And they have been for him. So anyhow, along the way, in the 70s, I had a few struggles with anxiety and a few struggles with marriage. Gary didn't, I did. So there was a person here named Emerson Eggerich. And since then, he's been well known. He wrote Love and Respect and a lot of those things, and I went to counseling there. At that time, my life began to change. I became a Christ follower, and I was baptized, and our kids started going there, and we have gone to New Covenant for 46 years, a long time. So a lot of our lives, a lot of our kids, a lot of our memories are there. And we were blessed with wonderful friends. I have girlfriends, prayer group friends, Bible study friends that I've had for 40-some years. And Gary, tell him about...
I don't have any friends.
No, he has no friends. But anyhow, tell him about, what you've done, at Washington, your friends. You started baseball teams, the Pips, and all of those.
When we were back in Forest Drive, in fact, when I was back in Illinois, I always played baseball and softball. And I started a team on Forest Drive, and as Betty said, we had wonderful neighbors. I kind of recruited many of them to play softball with us. So we had,
and they're still our friends.
Yeah, we had a neighborhood softball team for, I don't know how many years, maybe 15, 20 years. And it was a great happening. Every time we had a game, we had the wives come with when we first started, the children were really little babies, and at the end, they were all almost as big as their parents. So it's a good story. It was a good tradition.
Yeah. And then when one of our kids started McKinley, it seemed like overwhelming to have little kids go to a big middle school. When I went to a one-room schoolhouse, it seemed like a big place, a big transition. So we started a prayer group, and we all had kids starting McKinley. And we're still friends today. At that same time, Gary started doing, because our kids went to Washington then, and you did the chain and down marker.
Yeah, the kids went to Washington High School, and I was involved with the sports there, and just happened to start doing the chain gang where you hold the first down markers for the football team. And I did that for all the time the kids were there, and I kept doing it through the years, and I finally retired this year, but I did it 46 straight years, which is quite a long time.
And then you were inducted into the Hall.
Yeah, I'm in the Iowa High School Hall of Fame.
And I think, I don't know who's going to watch this video or who's going to want it, but I think Gary and I would say that the greatest times of our life have been with our kids. It's been fun. It's been, we can't even talk about it without crying, because that's how blessed we were and how much fun they have been and what a joy they've been to us. All three sons-in-laws know that there never could have been a man good enough for our daughters. But they're the best ones God found. I'm teasing. They're wonderful, and we have 9 grandbabies. The oldest one is now 17, and the littlest one is going to be 7, so we had 9 in there just going up and down. That's Grandma Marge and Grandpa Jack chiming in again. Yeah.
Appropriate ending?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, as far as our kids, the thing I pray for them and care about most is that they are solid followers of Jesus Christ for life, because then we'll always be together. There's a lot of ups and downs and hard times, and marriage isn't easy, life isn't easy, there's struggles, but we're together. And I just want to read this. Gary's going to go, oh no. But anyhow, I got this out, and it's our wedding invitation, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of weathered. I mean, we didn't have fancy ones. You had a little piece of paper. And this is a program, and we just put those together. You know, they weren't real fancy. We just glued them together, what we put in there and everything. But I thought this was interesting on the back. We, as the bride and groom, are honored to have you as our guests today. That's 50 years ago. We want to share with you these happy and sacred moments with us. May the blessing of the Lord be on all of us as we together worship. It is our desire that Christ shall be honored, not only in this service, but in the years to come. We want him to be the head of our home and the Lord of our lives. As we light this candle together, the center one will be extinguished, our own candles, thus letting the center candle represent the union of our lives into one flesh. As this one light cannot be divided, neither shall our lives be divided, but united in a testimony in a Christian home. May the radiance of this one light be a testimony of our unity in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. What else do we need to say?
Amen. Thank you.